go. All right, great. So, welcome to the best edition of ENGR210 you'll have this entire day. Okay, so earlier this week, we talked a bit about just getting started in Python. I hope that you're always comfortable making variables, defining things, variables as numbers, throwing those together, doing math with them. Pretty much, we're feeling pretty good about that. If not, you will by the end of the homework, or so I hope. I'll be going up after class. But today, we've been able to say, okay, we can get numbers, we can do math with them, yay! But there are a few things that we can think of that are just straight calculations, right? Like if I'm going to do a math problem, the calculations are the last part, right? There's a whole bunch of decisions going up to that. So that means our programs have to be able to make decisions. That's what we're going to be talking about today. They're also called conditional statements. Essentially, they make a decision based on a condition. For example, if you put in the time remaining in class, and that time is, and you ask, is that time equal to 0? If the answer is no, sad. Yes, happy, right? So this is what's called. This is how we can do conditionals. So this is how we can ask questions in Python. It's a yes or no. It has to be a yes or no question. You're asking, hey, if this is this, do this or this. That is the sum of a conditional statement in a very vague sense. In a more descriptive sense, you can ask these 6 questions. That's it. You can ask up to 6 different kinds of yes or no questions. And these are pretty much the same questions that you can ask in any programming language, Python or otherwise, if you decide to pick up something else, VBA, Fortran, whatever. Most of these stay the same. Not equal for whatever crazy reason. That one seems to change, and it's really annoying. But in Python, it's that. So these are the 6 questions that you can ask. So when we ask them, what does it look like? So let's have ourselves a look. I don't want that one. I want that one, and I want that one. All right. So here's my power. This is again. Remember, what I'm doing right now is the same as typing in commands to the IPython console in the bottom right-hand thing of Spider. If you want to have Spider up to kind of follow along, go for it. So, hang on. Make sure that this is, there it is, resume share. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to pop into the console. Great. Okay, so I'm going to assign 2 variables. I'm going to say x, I'm going to call that 3. Pull up y, call that 5. All right. So I have 6 questions that I can ask. I can ask if x is equal to y, x is greater than y, less than y, greater than equal to y, less than equal to y, or not equal to y. Right? Those are my six questions. What happens when I ask those questions is I get a yes or no answer. So I can say, is x greater than y? False. Or if I say x less than y, true. That is the sum total of the response that you get to those questions. It's either, as I said, it's either yes or no. Also, just a tip: be careful of the equals question because it's 2 equal signs. All right. So you can ask that too. So and based on that true or false response, Python will do something different. So let's have a look at what that looks like. There we go. So just jumping back over to here. So based on that true or false, for example, if 3 is greater than 1, which is true or false. Thank you very much. Everyone's not asleep yet. If that's true, then Python will do whatever I'm going to call is inside of the if statement. The if statement is how Python knows that you're asking a question, and how it knows what to do, whether or not that, based on whether or not that the answer to that question is true or false. So if you type this in here, if 3 greater than 1, colon, you'd have to do this in the scripting window on the left-hand side and run the code from there. If I put this in, this is true, right? So it'll do whatever is inside of the if statement. It knows what's inside of the if statement because everything that's inside is tabbed in by one level. So relative to here. So this print statement is tabbed in 1 from where this if is. As soon as you hit things that aren't tabbed anymore, you have left the if statement. I know that was kind of like a really fast summary. So we're going to walk through that again in code, okay? So I'm going to just write down what the structure is, and then we'll pop over into Spider and see if we can write that out. Okay. Okay. All right. So said we're moving over to the scripting window, so I need to go over into Vim, which is my little scripting thing. All right. Here I am. Move this guy over a little bit. It doesn't work out correctly otherwise. There we go. All right, so we always put in a comment, right, to say what the program does. So I'm going to say, this is a test program to demonstrate if statements or conditional statements. I'm going to save it as something so that knows what it is. All right. Just as before, I'm going to define a couple of variables, say like x equals 5, y equals 67. Why not? I'm also going to be a little bit more descriptive here. I'm going to say that this is my user input section. We don't have what's called, this might be a little bit different than how you're used to thinking about user inputs. Like if I have inputs to Word, right? My inputs are clicking bold, clicking font size 12, whatever, right? We don't have a graphical user interface anymore. We have text. So our user inputs are going to change a little bit. Eventually, we'd like to not have the user mess around inside of the code, right? We want them to just tell the code what to do and just let it run. We don't want them to touch what we've made because what we've made is going to be perfect. But for right now, our user inputs are just going to be a couple of variables inside of the code. All right. I'm going to say this is first variable that we're going to compare. This is the second one. Just trying to describe what it is that each thing is, so that we know. All right. Any questions there? Great. All right. So then we're going to so the next thing is to compare them. So you start the if statement with saying if all lowercase. Remember, capitalization is important. Let's do a greater than. So we'll do if x is, actually let's do if x is less than y. You end the line with a colon. You always have to end with a colon. If you don't end with a colon, Python will yell at you, and I'll show you what it does in a minute. And then for me, it tabbed in for me already. If it did not tab in for you, make sure you tab in once. And then let's just say something if x is less than y. So we'll just say print, hey, x was less than y. All right. You all got that? wait a little longer. So this is a pretty rudimentary code. Let's see how it runs. So jump over here, run it. There we go. So it printed what was in that print statement, which we'd expect it to do, because x was less than y, right? So if I went through, oops, if I went through and I got to my code, and I wanted to like walk through what happened here, I could go line by line, right? So code runs from top to bottom, one line after the other. So comment, ignore it, comment, ignore it. Okay, x is now 5, y is now 667. Ignore that comment. If x is less than y, is this true? Yep, so x is less than y, 5 is less than 67. So I'm going to do whatever is inside of the if statement. Whatever is inside of the if statement is whatever is indented underneath of the if. So I'm going to print, hey, x was less than y. Sweet. All right. What if x is not less than y? So what if I come up here and say, whoopsie, sorry. That's one thing I don't like about being full screen. There we go. I'm going to make x 500. Now x is not less than y, right? So if I come down, okay, x is 500, y is 67. Ignore the comment. X is, if I ask if x is less than y, that answer is now false, right? So the code is not going to do whatever is in here. If I run this, jump out of here again. If I run that, I see nothing, right? The code ran, but there was nothing for it to spit out because x was not less than y. So it just skipped over the print statement, right? X was not less than y, so it didn't do whatever was here. Now this is like a little problematic, right? I mean, we're interested in the answer to that question, whatever the answer may be. If it's no, we want it to do something else, right? So how we capture that is what's called an else. So literally just put else. I'm just going to say, hey, y was less than x. Remember, there's a colon right after else as well. So what an else does is it says, if the answer to this question was false, do this. All right? So if I come through here, x is 500, y is 67. Okay, if x is less than y, well, x is not less than y. This is false, right? So the program is going to skip everything inside of the if, everything that's indented, and we'll go to the next non-indented line, which is the else. Let's say, oh, else do this. Okay, I'll do whatever's inside of the else. And again, everything that's inside is indented. This is how Python knows what is part of what structure. You'll see it again when we talk about loops and such. Does that logic make sense? Do you have any questions? No? Okay, good. All right, so if I run that now, it does exactly what we expect, right? It's called y is less than, sorry, yeah, y is less than x, and it went into that else to find that bit of code that we wrote, to find that print statement. All right, cool. Now let's get a little bit more nuanced here. So we can put these if statements in anywhere that we want, right? Could I put one in here, like inside of the if statement? Could I put an if statement in an if statement? Why not? It's like it's like asking a second question. Think about it like think about it like that. All an if statement is asking a question. I can ask as many questions as I want, so long as I do them one after the other. So I can come up here and say, okay, if x is less than y, print that, and ask another question. Ask if x is equal to y. Why not? Say, I'm going to say, hey, this is weird. Whoops, and I can't write that. Actually, I'm going to change this one to less than or equal to. All right. So let's kind of walk through this one. I'll change x to be 667 for the sake of argument. All right. So I come over here. X is 67, right? Y is now 67. If x is less than or equal to y, is this true or false? True, because x and y are equal, so it's less than or equal to, so this is all true. So where do I go from here? Yep, so I'm going to print that, then what? Yep, and what do I do now? I have to ask this question, which is, yep, so this is also true. And then it goes into that if statement and prints off this. Where do I go from here? See how intuitive we're feeling today. Say again? I didn't hear you the first time. Correct. After this, I'd skip the remainder of this if statement because this else only exists to do things if this guy is false, right? And this was not false, so this guy doesn't get used. When I finish with this line of code and I finish this block, I just skip to the end of the if statement at large. Does that make sense, folks? Yeah. Got it. Good question. So this else only connects with the if that's on the same line of indentation as itself. I could have another else in here, and it would correspond to the if on line 11. So each if only connects with one else, which is another point. You can only have one else for every if. Good question though. Excellent. All right. Cool. So that's if statements. We can nest them. That's what doing what I did with the two ifs inside of each other. It's called a nested if statement. I can ask different questions, and I can kind of catch if the answer is not what I think that it's going to be, or at least not what the if is asking for. So that's all good stuff, right? All right. So on with the show. Sweet. All right. Ignore that part. I want to look at this guy. So I didn't have it in my examples. I just want to make sure I did it at least once. So say that one variable is 1, another variable is 0. All right. That make this true, right? Okay. We said if this is true, I go in and I do everything that's inside of the if statement, right? What do I do after this line? Where do I go? Is there anything else that's indented there? No. So there's nothing else in the if statement. Means I just keep on going with the code. So after I finish an if statement, I just keep on going. So my next thing would be to print whatever answer is, which in this case is 24. Okay, does that make sense? Cool. And this is and if I went back over to here, I could. Oops, I need to reshare that. There we go. If I went back over to here, I could see that by saying at the end of this print, hey, look, I'm done. Which is after my if statement, right? It's after everything's done, regardless of if I went into the else or if I didn't go into the else or anything like that. This guy here is after the if statement, and it's not indented. Means that it's just part of the rest of the code, and it will always run. So if I pop out of that, there we go. That third line, that third print statement, the hey look I'm done ran. If I go back in and I change up X and Y so that, say like X is 500, X is 500, I can run that again, and I see that last print statement's still there. It's after the if statement. It's outside of the if statement. It's not indented. It will always run because it's not part of that. It's not part of that question process that determines how the code flows. Does that make sense to everyone? Cool. Great. All right. So now we have a little bit more nuance. So let me pop back in there. All right. So we said being able to nest if statements is cool because it means we can say, okay, if the answer to this is yes, well, I need to ask another question about it. It's kind of like if I have a block of metal in front of me, and I want to use it to build something. My first question is, what kind of material is this, right? Is it steel? Is it aluminum? Is it blah? Then if I get the answer of, okay, it's steel, okay, what kind of steel? Is it this? Is it 2112? Is it whatever, right? So nested if statements are kind of like that. You're getting more detail about a particular topic. However, sometimes you have to be able to ask more questions like, okay, if it's not steel, what is it? And I want to be more precise than an else. I have to ask another question. I can do that with something called an else if or elif. I'm going to say elif x is, let's see, covered a lot of ground on that one. I'm going to say if x is greater than y, I'm going to get rid of this guy over here just so that there's a little bit more stuff to ask questions about. There we go. So I'm going to ask, else if x is greater than y. So what the heck is going on here? I changed a couple of things just so that we can organize our code a little bit more. So what's going on here is that we have our if statement here on line 9. If x is less than y, it's asking that question. If that question is true, it does whatever is inside of the if statement, skips down to the end, and runs line 16. Right? That's what we had. Now, if x is not less than y, if that is false, before we said, okay, it'll skip down to the next unindented line, which used to be the else. Now it's the else if. So if x is less than y, sorry, if x is greater than y, sorry, or equal to, if it's not less than, it now goes down to the else if, which asks a second question. Is x greater than y? If that's true, it'll do whatever is inside of the else if, which we're going to say is print, hey, x was greater than y. Okay? If I go down to line 9, and that's false, means I go down to line 11. If that's false, then I get to the else. The else is always the last part of the if statement. You don't have to have it. Remember, we just added this like second or third thing that we did, but it always comes last because it's what you do if there's nothing else that's true. Okay. In this particular case, what's true about x and y if we go into the else statement? Is x greater than y, less than y, equal to y, not equal to y, less than equal to y, greater than equal to y? How are the two related? Yeah. Right. It has to be, because we said it's, if we get to the else statement, it's not less than, it's not greater than, has to be equal to. So we'll put that message in here. Print, hey, x was equal to y. Perfect. All right. And just for kicks, because I like things that look nice, I'm just going to put a row of dashes in so that it looks at least somewhat nice. So I just printed a row of dashes between my last statement and all my other things. All right, so let's see what that does. Awesome. So that's one that we expect, because x was 500 and y was 667. If I back up, change x to 0. Cool. Still doing what we expect, right? And we know that those last two lines are always going to print no matter what, because they're not inside of the if. Then I'm going to come up here. I'm going to set x equal to 67 and y equal to 667. And we just ran that else if. We can ask all the same questions in an else if that we would in an if. It's just else if blah 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 blah. So we can treat it exactly the same way. Any questions about that? We feeling good? Feeling snazzy? Sweet. All right. Then since we're feeling snazzy, I'll just mention something else quick here. It's fun to write words in print statements, but it's awfully more useful if we can put numbers in. So one way to do that, a cheap and easy way to do that, is if I'm going to rewrite this print statement. So say, hey, instead of saying x is greater than y, I want to use the value of x. So I'm going to close my string, put another parenthesis there, comma, the variable that I want to write, comma, type, which call open parenthesis, type some more, and put my last variable in. Note that I have a space after the than. I don't have a space after the comma. Want to see what that does. Make sure to, once you're finished, just make sure to change your x to be greater than y so that we can see that. Sorry, that's less than y. Make it less than y. because that's what that if statement's about. Okay. So let's run that. There we go. There we go. It just sticks the value of the variable into the print statement. Now, note here, if you look at that first line of text, it's hey, comma, space 60 was less than space 67. When we put those commas into the print statement, it automatically inserted spaces for us. We don't have to do it ourselves. So just something to keep in mind if you're trying to make it look nice. Any questions about that? So you can put as many, you can string together as many variables and strings as you want doing this in a print statement. If you do this with a decimal value, it's not exactly going to, it is not necessarily going to look pretty. It'll work. It might come out with 15 decimal places attached to it, but it'll work. We'll talk more about how to control that in a couple months. So don't worry too much about it. Okay, great. So that's ifs, else, printing output. That's that. Any questions there? Sweet. Then onwards, upwards. So we talked about that. Well, if we want to ask questions, we want to be able to ask nuanced questions. Which I want to ask if this and that are true, or this or that are true. If I'm building something, maybe something that steel or aluminum could work. So we need to be able to ask these questions in Python too. I still didn't update this one. Dang it, I did this last time. Ignore the end if, please. Sorry. That's from VBA. So there are really two that are super important, but 3 nuanced questions that you can ask. You can ask this and that, this or that, or just if something's not something. Okay. All right. So I have some truth tables here. It's called how you can think of these is if x equals 1 is true and y equals 3 is true, this entire statement is true. Okay? Or it's if x equals 1 is true or if y equals 3 is true, this whole statement is true. Okay? Not just means whatever the opposite of this is what this statement is. So if this is false, this is true. This is true, whole statement's false. Cool beans? So let's play a game. There's your input. Is that first line, x equals 1 and y equals 3, is that true? True or false? False. Next one? Yep. Next one? Yes. All right, round 2. First line. False. Next one? Yep. Yes. Last round. Yes. Yep. False. Right, because x does equal 1. Great. All right. Perfect. So let's try throwing this in code and see what happens. All right. So I'm going to I'm just going to comment this out quick. Oops, don't want to do that. Sorry. I'm going to do Shift 3. Okay, so I'm just going to comment all that stuff out and start something new. Sorry, I don't know how to do that fast in Spider. I've tried to find a way to do it, and I think I found it once, but I forget what it is. So I'm just commenting that out so that the computer will ignore it. Okay, so I'm just going to do something quick and dirty. I'm going to make a calculator to see whether or not a number is even or odd. So what's a way to do that? How do I figure out if a number is even or odd? What's an easy way to do that? Is there some math thing, some math trick? Like, are all even numbers divisible by something? 2, right? And no odd number is divisible by 2, right? Perfect. So if I can say that a number is divisible, you can divide a number by 2 and get a remainder of 0. It's even. If there's any remainder, it's odd, right? Cool. So let's play that game. Because we have a math operator that lets us get the remainder. It's probably, I mean, it's more or less useless outside of this system to me, but it's super cool because you get to do this. So I'm going to say, let's check if x and y. Let's check each one to see if they're even or odd. So I'm going to put in the comment, say divide x and y by 2, get remainder. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a variable. I'm going to call it my x output. I'm going to say x modulo 2. So remember that modulo, which is the percent sign, that says get the remainder of this number divided by whatever the second number is. So in this case, it's x divided by 2, find the remainder. In this particular case, x is 60. So x modulo 2 should be what? What's the remainder of that? 660 divided by 2. 0, right, because it's exact. So x output should, for x equals 60, x output should be 0. Let's make another one for the y. Y output, y modulo 2. That should be what? What should y output be for y equals 67? 1, right? Because 2 divides evenly into 66. But not 67. It's off by 1. So y modulo 2 in this particular case should be 1. Great. So now I'm going to say if, yeah, y output should be 1. Yeah, for this particular case. Okay. So let's start asking some questions here. So if x output, I want to be able to say something if both of them are even or both of them are odd or one of them is odd, whatever. So I'm going to say if x output and y output, sorry, blah blah. Sorry, I missed my questions. I have to ask questions. If x output is 0 and y output equals 0, colon, print both x and y are even. So this is the and. So this is how to use the and that we were talking about before. I ask 2 separate questions and I connect them with an and. And if both of these are true, then the whole line is true. Okay? So right now, are both of those true? No. So it means that I'm not going to do line 13 right now, as it is written. Okay. So I want to ask another question, so I can say exactly which one is even, which one is odd. So else if x output is 0, how do I want to say this? Do I want to say that? Yes. I'm going to say print x is even. Now, what's up with this? I'm asking the same thing here and here, right? why, which call, but I know that I can actually still, which call, how do I say this? I'm asking the same question here and here, but what makes them what makes it different? What makes lines 12 and 14 different from each other? Say again? Yeah, which one? What are we gonna say? Right. I'm asking one of the same questions in each line. In line 14, it doesn't matter what y output is. I'm not asking a question about it. I'm only asking about x output in line 14. So here in line 12, right now it's false. However, line 14, that's true, right? So so I can nuance my question in order to kind of get at the information that I want. Might as well ask another one. About y, and I can keep on going here to get at exactly how I want. I can have as many else ifs as I want. I can stack them up to my heart's content. One thing to be careful of, though, and we were kind of hinting at before, make sure that your questions don't, how do I say this? Make sure that your questions don't overlap. Meaning, if I want to ask if one thing's true up here, and I want to ask something more about that down here, like if y output is 0 and x output is 0, only line 13 is going to run. It's not going to touch any of my else ifs, right? So if I want to ask something more, I need to make sure that I account for where the code's going to go, because it'll only run one of these branches in the if statement. It'll only run one of the questions or the else. It'll only run the code in one of them. So I need to make sure that I understand where it's going and what it does when it gets there. Does that make any sense? Cool. All right. Cool. And we can keep on going with that if you so desire. I just want to make sure we wrap up with this. I think I have. Oh, actually, no. We're all set. We finished everything. Sweet. Perfect. So that's pretty much all. That's pretty much all that we got then. Your homework will be out shortly. There are a couple of calculators. There are a couple of things that require use of conditionals. One thing that I would caution you on is that to a computer, a number is a number. It does not have any units. It's just numbers. So you have to take care of units. Cheers. Units are fun. Make them your friends. Yes. I would definitely do. I would definitely do that. So if I was young warthog, there we go. Okay. So if I was writing in here, and this guy up here was in meters, say, I would absolutely put units there, and then wherever I used it, I'd keep track of units there too, and so on and so forth. And then when I print it out, I'd also add units to it. And then I'd say, well, if I'm multiplying two things together in here, and one has to be in meters and the other has to be in pascals, I convert all my units inside of the code to make sure that I get the right things, or before I put it in. Because the computer is just going to take two numbers and slap them together, and that's it. It's not going to correct for wrong or incompatible units. So you have to. Only you can prevent unit confusion. Cool. And that'll be part of your homework. There's a really cool thing called the International Standard Atmosphere. It defines pressure, temperature, and density of air as you move up and up in altitude. I listed the equations for the troposphere and the stratosphere, so like 0 through 64,000 feet above mean sea level. So you get to play with those. Any questions? All right. Thanks for stopping by. Yes.